My niece is 2 years old, my nephew 6. With my nephew I can play games like Mario Kart. My niece, I have to take her to things like the zoo. She is in a very curious stage at the moment. And when I take her to the petting zoo, I try to point her to animals and I say, look over there, it's a goat. There's a chicken. Can you see what that is? And then that's a chicken as well. I said, very good. Is that a sheep? Yes, that's a sheep. And we do this every now and then. And sometimes she instructs me what a sheep is and a chicken, and sometimes I have to correct her a little bit, but she's very smart for her age. A repetitional process, much like AI, is working in its simplicity. I'm standing here before you today because my job has been impacted tremendously in the last year. The years before that as well with Corona, but the newest danger is called artificial intelligence. But rather, is it called a danger or an opportunity? So, flashback to November 2022. I was going to my class and a student walked up to me and said, "Sir, have you seen this program?" It was a generative AI program, like I know, but this one was able to write text. Very good text. And I came to the conclusion that it could also write in Dutch, it could write in English, it could write any language, and actually better on the level than the student who introduced it to me. And I asked the student, do you know what you can do with this power? To which the student said, yes, I could let it do my midterm paper, right? I said, yeah, but you should also be aware that I'm still your teacher, so I don't know whether that was the best thing to mention. But the genie was out of the bottle. ChatGPT was born. And we started embracing ChatGPT to a large extent in the classroom, at least in my classroom. Because you should know I am a bit of an educational geek as well as an idealist. Not necessarily an optimist, but I do like to see chances. So when the time came in my classes, I teach marketing and data analytics at a University of Applied Sciences. The assignment was to write a reflection report for first-year students. They had to write down what they learned exactly by working the marketing assignment. I have written myself a reflection report to the level that I expect, but all of my students surpassed me in their incredible writing system that they developed in less than a month. I want to say that not all of them were exactly truthful. Emily Dickinson was nothing compared to some of the genius pieces that I wrote, to which my alarm, of course, goes off. And for me, that was an wow moment, realizing that AI, even though I have been working with it in my own career for the last 3 years, this is now also a tool that was used by students. And we can never go back. To the great dismay of some of my colleagues, of course, because what you should know from education in a University of Applied Science is that we have to create all the assignments and the exams over the summer period. So we were not prepared when the semester exams came in January. A lot of the exams were prone, or partly prone, to have at least impacted by generative AI, such as BART, Bing, ChatGPT, DALL-E, Midjourney, etc. And we had to come up with a decision of what would be our next steps. Well, let's go back a little bit in time and describe my journey with artificial intelligence and digitalization in the last years. I'm born in the year 1993, you do the math. Just in time for all the Disney movies and Pokemon, but also just in time for the upcoming epic powerhouse that was known as Google. And I remember very vividly that a teacher in the 4th grade called Meester Theo, I never got his last name, introduced me to Google because he thought that little geeky boy would probably be interested in it. And he was right. I loved Google. I thought it was great. Going a little bit forward, I was going to high school. And I did HAVO, and I had this one teacher, Miss Alzweta. I never got her first name. But she introduced me to Wikipedia. And she said, Tim, you have to be very careful about Wikipedia because it will destroy libraries as we know it. Well, that is not exactly what happened. But then again, Mr. Dale also said that I should be very careful with using this technology. And when I became a teacher 5 years ago, I was thinking for myself, what is the kind of digitalization that I want to embrace in my classroom? Well, in my classroom, you're allowed to use WhatsApp. You're allowed to use your laptop. You're allowed to chat with each other, heck, even share inspiration from each other in your own interpretation. Because the goal of education is different in everyone's view. When I was preparing this presentation, I also looked up the definition of education, to which you will mostly find ideas of being instructed by an instructor. That is the most generic, often frequent definition of education, being instructed by an instructor, and accordingly, being rewarded for how well you do those instructions. Again, in my opinion, this kind of sounds like AI. But I would argue that in my last 5 years of being a teacher, a lot has happened. A pandemic has happened. Big data introduction to courses has happened, but now we have artificial intelligence. I would like to believe that students are very well capable to work with artificial intelligence, provided that we give them the breathing space to do so. Because what I want to prevent in my work is that there's a discrepancy between the interpretation of how teachers fear AI and how students yearn AI. We need to find a common course. And that starts with introducing AI as a concept in society, I believe. Because my added definition to education, yes, it is being instructed by an instructor, but I believe that it's also embracing values. Values that you've been taught by hopefully great teachers like I had with Mr. Theo and Ms. Alzaweta. But we need to make certain rules for that. And that is my crusade now at this moment. I am partly responsible for reworking 12 different studies in my building, the University of Applied Sciences where I teach. And we have different studies, such as international business, which is my area, as well as accountancy and real estate. And let me assure you that a study like accountancy has a far more difficult challenge in front of them because they are so focused on the output. And AI is very good for output, but it's not necessarily good in describing how it came to that output. Same as students. They're not exactly good at describing how they come to the output. And for that reason, I am now reworking 12 different studies and am advising them on how to make AI courses AI-proof, or at least let them embrace artificial intelligence. So what I want to share with you today is my experiences with artificial intelligence in the classroom. And we cannot do that without embracing the idea that education is reflective of development. So what does education actually serve? What is its purpose? Its purpose is to prepare people for the real world. Does that mean that we have to restrict technology? Does that mean that we have to hunt students for plagiarism? Does that mean that we have to be watchful that they do not cheat in any form or way? Depending on the country that you ask, there are different ideas of what AI is allowed to do in education and what shouldn't. Let me be very clear. I do not believe that an AI should write an entire thesis, but I am of the opinion that it could be a tool, because it could potentially help the student understand its own ideals and its own message that it wants to convey. So, I have 3 hot topics on AI in education, and I'll break them down for you. First, starting with understanding AI for its purpose. Is AI a system? Is it a tool, maybe? I would say that it is a tool, just as much as it was with Google and Wikipedia. Both Google and Wikipedia are here for research. AI, such as ChatGPT, is for research as well, ideally. However, the problem is that most students use AI not as a research tool, but as a decision-making tool. And that is what's wrong. And who can blame them? If you have to write a partly of thesis and you are not that skilled or confident in your skills of writing a thesis, and you have a perfectly working chainsaw in front of you and you have to cut a tree, but you're not allowed to use the chainsaw, instead we give you a butter knife. Well, of course, there will be resistance. But the problem is in the moment that AI is used as a decision-making tool, and that is partly on the blame of students, and in its length on the blame of teachers being fearing of AI. The second hot take that I want to share with you is that I want to acknowledge that AI is changing education, but it's changing education at its current state. Education can change. Education can take new forms. One big trend that we see in didactics is that we work more from a summative test, meaning one take, one exam, to a more formative test. A formative test is that you check the development of the students throughout the weeks, forming towards an end goal instead of one summation. I personally believe that a formative assessment is almost always better than a summative assessment. However, you can imagine that working with a formative assessment means that I have to check my students almost on a weekly basis. Ideally, I have interviews with them and I have coaching meetings with them, and that takes time. And that's difficult. So AI is challenging education in its current form, but you can also consider for yourself, what should AI be in education? And I have done an attempt in order to make people understand that AI can do good things in education. About 2 years ago, I co-developed a minor program called AI for Society. A part of the learning development of third-year students is that they choose for the minor and they then learn how to code, deep learning, machine learning, and understand how big data works with a language model of AI. That is the technical part, that's AI. But the model is called AI for Society. What we're also teaching to those students is the ethical responsibility of working with the language model, to which you must acknowledge that it's almost always biased. We have wonderful shareholders and stakeholders who give us assignments. For example, we are helping companies build a Ring doorbell for people who suffer dementia, so that they understand that someone at the doorbell is a friend because of the facial recognition of artificial intelligence. That is something that I think is good for society. And rest assured, there's also students who really like to just play video games with AI, but it is my opportunity with that minor to introduce students to the ethical part of artificial intelligence. And I think that that is what the discussion should be in education. Not how do we prevent the tool as a decision-making tool, but how should AI affect education? The third take that I want to share with you is defining the values of society. Because in my belief, I think that your education and your development at school with your teachers is partly influential to the societal values that you have. So if we decide that AI should not be used as a decision-making tool, then we should follow that up in education and make sure that it's not used as a decision-making tool, but only as a research tool. Because here's the thing, the human values, the potential to come up with new ideas, to make decisions, to consider, is what makes us human. There are many things that AI does better than a human. I'm very sure that they could have written a better, fluent presentation than I'm giving here, but how charming is it for me to stand here in all my shyness and stutter my way through 12 minutes. So if we want to change the educational system, we also need to acknowledge the global considerations of what are our values and how do we follow them up. What makes us human and what makes AI AI. And that gives me an advice that I want to share with you today. Consider for yourself, what is it in your line of field, your daily work, that makes you human? Is it compassion, empathy, correlation, context, love? I can assure you, ChatGPT is not able to love. In conclusion, I think that we have a big assignment in front of us, and we should acknowledge that the genie is out of the bottle. AI is here to stay. And it's our obligation, at least my obligation in the classroom, to welcome people back after the pandemic. 96% of our students stated in the survey that they want to be in the classroom. People yearn for context, for empathy, for contact. And if we are able to do that, we can use AI for its intended purposes, a research tool and not as a rule. Thank you.